Now, friends, you can ask me questions. And okay. Brian?
Bhante, I will read the questions to you.
Okay, very good.
Okay. So the first question is, dear Bhanteji, when the distracted mind arises, one should be first aware of it, then second investigate by asking, this is not beneficial, we must abandon it. Is this the correct thing to do? Is this the correct approach?
Yes, that is the correct way. First let it arise and then investigate. Is this uh, going to help me to attain my goal? What is the goal? We mentioned five. Goal means purpose. Five purposes we mentioned. I think we all know, you all know the five purposes. What are the five purposes? First is to purify the mind. If the mental state is negative, for instance, greed, hatred, delusion, and so on, definitely when they arise, when we investigate, we know it is not going to purify the mind. Second purpose is to overcome sorrow, lamentation. Third purpose is to overcome suffering. Fourth purpose is to put ourselves on the right path. Fifth path is by following the right path, attaining total liberation from suffering, Nibbana. These are the five purposes. So when a certain mental state arises, you immediately become aware of that particular mental state, then question, does this help me to attain that goal? Is this suitable? What is my domain? Am I confused? These are the questions we have to ask. And you have to get correct answer. Depending on the answer, you proceed from there. Okay?
The next question is, why is death personified by Mara?
Why is that what?
Personified by Mara. What is the personification of death using the figure of Mara?
I do not understand the question. Please repeat it.
Yes. Why is death personified as Mara?
What is the death as
Why is death personified as Mara?
signify as Mara? Yes, death. Death. I think that is also a good question. Here, death, the death is uh, signified as Mara. That death is the death of wholesome things. When when mental state arises to kill the wholesome thing, that state is called Mara. Mara means death. Mara means death. So in the Pali word, literal translation of Mara means death. Marana. Marana. Mara is personification of death. Marana is the noun, abstract noun, and we personify that as Mara. What does this Mara do? This Mara kills our wholesome mental state. That is why it is called Mara. For instance, hatred is a Mara, Mara's army. Jealousy is Mara's army. And Praising oneself and disparaging others is Mara's army. And becoming greed is Mara's army. Discontentment is Mara's army. And so forth. There are so many. Sleepiness is Mara's army. Drowsiness is Mara's. All these blocks our the path for attaining liberation. Therefore, in that sense, it is signified as Mara. Okay?
Okay. Next question. Trying to understand it. Can you please explain the difference between mind, mano, and chitta when in the context of a mind that's still underdeveloped and has attachment?
Mind and mano,
Between mind and consciousness.
mind and
But
consciousness.
the mind that is not that is still undeveloped. What's the difference between mind and consciousness?
Yes. Mind is the root. It is called mano dhatu. Dhatu means root. Mind is the root. Vijnana is arising from that root. That's called consciousness. So mano dhatu, mano vijnana dhatu. So mind is the root and consciousness is arising from that root. Since it arises from that root, it is also called vijnana dhatu. Mano dhatu, mano vijnana dhatu. Mano dhatu, Dhamma dhatu, mano vijnana dhatu. There are three roots. Dhamma dhatu is the very first mind object. First mind object means when you open your eyes, in front of your eyes there is an object. As soon as you open your eyes, the object is there, and before anything else happens, object appears, object reflects in your eye, the shiny part, and that very first moment is called Dhamma dhatu. And then arises the next root from the mano dhatu, mind root, the what you call root of basis, this mano dhatu and mano vijnana. These three happen so quickly, it is impossible to differentiate or separate these three when they arise. Okay?
Okay, Bhante, we don't have any more questions in the chat, but I will ask a question.
Yeah.
Yesterday you mentioned that sati means memory. I think it's the same root as the Sanskrit, smriti. But memory usually has to do with something that is a recall of something. And usually a recall is something from the past. But sati means paying total attention to what is happening right now. Can you please explain a little bit more the role of memory in practicing paying total attention to the present?
The memory here is the memory you first observe, you see something happening, that is not permanent, that is impermanent. And you have to remember impermanence is what you call happening all the time. Okay, the memory of impermanence. Whenever something happens, we just become aware of it and immediately become aware that it is impermanent. And that we have to put in our mind all the time, and that is the memory. And remembering certain other big events conversations and ideas and so forth and so on, is the gross, large picture of memory. The first memory, most important, is the memory of impermanence. And that happens, and we have to remember, what we experienced was not there, and due to certain causes and conditions something happens, and then it arose. As causes and conditions disappears, it disappears. That is why we see in Anupada Sutta, I mentioned this sutta several times, in Majjhima Nikaya, sutta number 111, Venerable Sariputta watched his mind so clearly, so perfectly, and he saw this particular mental state was not here before. Ahutva. Ahutva Sambhoti, which was not before. Now because of causes and conditions, it is arisen in the mind, and then Hutva Pativeti. That particular mental state disappears. He knows not something that exists that disappears, but something existing, something is not fixed to disappear, but something arises and then immediately that disappears. That kind of sharp awareness we build up in our mind to remember that all the time. That is what is happening. And that is, of course, our memory. We build up that memory. That is why when somebody seeing, we have records in Buddhist literature, someone seeing water seeping into the ground, gain the knowledge of impermanence and attain stream entry and so forth, liberation. And remember in Anguttara Nikaya there is a monk who said when he takes one breath and breathe it out, one inhale and exhale, during that very brief period of time, his mindfulness, his awareness, his memory is so deep. The memory is that rising and falling is taking place within one inhaling, within one exhaling. That triggers his full awareness of all, the awareness of impermanence of all conditioned things. And Buddha praised this monk because he was the one who practiced real mindfulness of death. He said, so you can see the very sharp, clean, quick changes that we have to. That doesn't happen very quickly if we don't keep practicing mindfulness meditation. That kind of awareness, that kind of knowledge, that kind of wisdom arises only when we keep just a very deep, dedicated practice. Okay?
Thank you, Bhante. Dear Bhante, the subconscious mind may keep repeating a song or a phrase on its own. When we tell ourselves not to repeat the phrase or the song, what is the difference with the mental state or subconscious mind that is singing and repeating, and the logical mind that tells the subconscious mind to stop singing or repeating the phrase?
Now, this subconscious mind is the term that we use, I think, in psychology and so on. In Abhidhamma, there is a term called Bhavanga. Bhavanga means the consciousness that is a part of becoming. Bhava means becoming, Anga means part. They use this term to link this particular mental state with the previous life. Therefore, whatever we build up, whatever habit, whatever we have accumulated in the mind in previous lives will operate in its own sphere in a most subtle way without becoming very clear and prominent. But whenever an object arises through the object is present to the sense, whatever sense, then that what you call bhavanga. Bhavanga meant a state is said immediately begin to vibrate. It's called bhavanga chalana. Chalana means shaking, vibrating. And then again, that particular mental state looks around to find out where this object came from, which sense, eyes, ears, nose, and so forth. And then the activity begins. This is pariuttana stage. I mentioned this. Consciousness becomes active, and then it begins to follow the path of eye or ear or so forth, and then all the procedure that we have followed in the past, and that is our habit. Habitually we continue to do that. And then we come in at a particular action. There's a Pali term, so that bhavanga chalana, bhavanga upacheda, panchadvara vajjana, chakku vinyana and so forth. The series of extremely quick mind moments arise. From that bhavanga state, where subconscious is sort of rather unambiguous, unclear mental state used in modern psychology and so forth. In Abhidhamma system, that particular state is what you call analyzed and sort of dissected and separated very clearly. Of course, these things we can know only by names, but there is no way to prove or show this. That is why doing some experiment on our mental state is impossible because of this extremely quick, swift changes. So, subconscious I am not very familiar with, although we use the term, but I am familiar a little bit of this Abhidhamma system. I am not Abhidhamma expert, but this particular mind process is familiar to me. Any other question?
Yes, next question. Is it the case that by reflecting on and by letting go of thoughts, we come to understand our mind and gain more peace? Are we changing our personality?
Are we thinking of personality?
No, are we changing our personality? Is our personality changing as a result of this practice?
Oh yes, surely. Our personality, in fact, our personality is governed, controlled, guided, shaped by the mind. And when my mental state is trained, disciplined through the practice of real meditation, certainly our personality it changes anyway, but it's a directions will be different. In this practice, in the meditation practice, our personality change in a wholesome, positive way to make the mind free from all grief, sorrow, lamentation, pain, and so forth, and to make mind perfectly peaceful, having unconditional peace, unconditional peace. And that can happen through our mental training. Thereby, certainly personality changes.
Thank you, Bhante. Next question. Does investigation give rise to insight? Or is it the enlightenment factor of samadhi that gives rise to insight? Which
Now,
one is it?
now investigation factor combined with samadhi brings insight or wisdom, because it is just like samadhi or concentration is like focusing mind on object. It is just like a laser beam. Just imagine this. I don't know very much about laser beam, but I imagine laser beam, you have to focus on very, very particular tiny little object, and to do that you have to have very clear eyesight. Clear eyesight is like mindfulness. That focus on the particular smallest spot is like samadhi, concentration. Only when these two join together, wisdom arises. And therefore, these are called samatha and vipassana, mindfulness and concentration. They always must go together in order to arouse our wisdom. Yeah.
There's a follow-up to the question, Bhante. Can
Uh-huh.
you please explain a little bit more what these insights are? What are these insights?
Insight, actually, that is another part of wisdom. Uh, Insight, of course, is difficult to explain. Insight is penetrating wisdom. Penetrating, what do we penetrate? Penetrate our ignorance. Ignorance is Buddha compared to an egg, or the head. Suppose there is an egg, inside the egg there is an embryo of a certain bird or reptile and so forth. When it gradually matures, then the little chick with tiny little nails and beak breaks the shell and slowly comes out. Now, insight does the same thing. Insight breaks the ignorance, breaks the shell or cover of ignorance, and then arises. This kind of action, this kind of occurrence is called insight. So that means insight is the thing that mental state that break through our ignorance. That is why it is called insight. Normally we talk about insight in ordinary mundane conversations. In that also there is an element of insight. But in meditation, insight is just to break through ignorance.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay?
I don't see any more questions in the chat right now.
I saw 6 questions in the chat box.
There's one that just appeared.
Yeah,
Okay.
one appeared, yes.
Yeah. Is that right that insights have to be explained by oneself? Insights are different depending on each person's karma and conditions to help us. Is that right?
Right. Insight is 100% personal, inexplicable, somebody cannot be explained, and it triggers just like intuition. Intuition we cannot explain, but when we have intuition, we do certain things, we say certain things out of our intuition. But intuition we cannot explain. Similarly, you have insight. I give the simile as a simile, as an example to illustrate the meaning of insight. Similarly, insight you will have and you will understand, and you cannot explain it. You can give some certain detail, this is such and so forth. Like whenever Sariputta, the Buddha, Mahakasyapa and so forth, they had insight, and using the insight they gave sermons, explained things, but they could not deliver the entire insight for anybody to understand unless the person read and listen and think and practice investigation and so forth. And then one would see, my goodness, this is such a marvelous thing. Like that. So one can give some hints of insight, but individuals have to develop. And moreover, of course, as you hinted, one has to have a good karma. Good karma means that person who has committed the practice and practice it for a long time in the factors of enlightenment. So, bhaveti bahuli karoti. Tandhammam bhaveti bahuli karoti. And yani katani, vattu katani, anutritani, parichitani, susamaradhani and so forth. Buddha has given a series of synonyms to explain it. That means you have to keep repeating in many different ways until we reach the polished, shining, sharp insight. I think, Chaturi, that is the time all we have today, all the time we have today. And I'm so happy that you asked. Good question. All are very good questions. This is how we do investigation. This is how we lead to the path, lead the path to liberation. As we mentioned 5 purposes, I mentioned one purpose is put ourselves on the right path. This is how we put ourselves on the right path. So I want to wish you all, especially those who are suffering from various sicknesses. May they all recover very soon, return to normal life, continue Dhamma practice, and liberate themselves from suffering not only in this life, all sufferings in samsara. And all those doctors, nurses, hospital staffs, whoever helped them out of compassion to recover these people from their sickness, and may they continue their wonderful, marvelous, compassionate service, and may they live long in good health and attain liberation. All those who have lost their loved ones and grieving, as I mentioned, one of our directors passed away recently, and his family, friends and so forth are grieving. And similarly, there may be many beings who pass away and their relatives and friends are grieving. May they be free from grief and continue their Dhamma practice and liberate from samsara. And all those who are supporting all wonderful noble projects, leaders taking leadership to help people in many ways, may they continue their wonderful service and attain liberation from samsaric suffering. And you all, whose name I have not mentioned, the category is not mentioned, all of them be well, happy and peaceful and attain liberation from samsaric suffering. Okay, let me close.
Thank you, Bhante. Terwan Saranai.
Thank you, Bhante. Terwan Saranay. Terwan Saranay.
Thank you, Bhante.
Take care. Thank you.
Saranay Swaminahan.
Terwan Saranai, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bhante, if you will.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you for your love.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, admin.
Thank you.
Manggalam.